The Celtics just became the first team in NBA history to blow 20-point leads in back-to-back playoff games. Both were on their home floor, meaning that the Knicks have stolen a 2-0 lead in maybe the craziest possible way. But was this a result of Boston collapsing, or did it have more to do with New York's late-game execution? It all started in Game 1, when Derek White hit a 3 from the wing to put the Celtics up by 20 with less than 6 minutes to go in the third. The Knicks came back down with an empty corner pick and roll, where Brunson drew help and found OG Anunoby for a wide open 3 of his own. And it was OG who got the run started. Next time down, he hit another open 3, then a few minutes later he spotted up and drew not 1 but 2 hard closeouts before picking up a landing space foul, sending him to the line for a chance to get 3 more. His 12 third quarter points played a huge part in keeping them alive, but of course it was Brunson who did most of the heavy lifting, as the Knicks always turn to his isolations as their primary form of late game offense. Most possessions for them start by clearing out the top of the key for Brunson to take his man one-on-one, and between the ball handling, strength, footwork, and shot making, good luck stopping him. On the other side of things, the Celtics like to run a lot of ball screens. This time they go to Spain pick and roll, and Robinson's gonna pick up the ball in a high drop while the low man tags the roll. Tatum makes the right read on a skip to Jalen, creating a long closeout, and the result is a wide open jumper that just comes up short. That's the look they want though, so they're gonna run it again with Derek White. Only White doesn't turn the corner and create that same rim pressure as Tatum, so the action fizzles out and instead turns into a ball screen from Pritchard, to which the Knicks just switch. Now you end up with White trying to play one-on-one and attempting a much tougher shot as opposed to an open corner 3. I'd say their primary form of offense is those ball screens from a guard. They like to hunt for mismatches, and the Knicks implemented a very specific coverage. Brunson's gonna jump out in a hedge, while OG goes under the screen, and that creates a brief window for Tatum to step into a pull-up 3. So just like last time, they run it again, and this time Tatum doesn't even wait for the hedge, he just pulls up from above the screen and buries another triple. The thing is, this is what the Knicks want. Tatum can hit pull-up jumpers at a high rate, but they'd much rather have him taking those shots with more volatility as opposed to getting downhill and scoring in the paint. This shot is the exact reason why Tatum has such a big disparity between his highs and lows. When the shot is falling, you end up with a performance like Game 7 against the Sixers, where he exploded for 51 points. But when the shot isn't falling, you end up with a performance like this Game 1, where he shot just 7 of 23 from the field and 4 of 15 from 3. More on that later though. For now, I want to focus on another go-to action for the Celtics, which is simply an isolation from one of the Jays. This is where that 5-out spacing creates lanes for them to get downhill, and when you force that help, you're able to get the types of looks from 3 that you want. Here's one where Tatum gets the cross match with Brunson, so no screen is needed to get a mismatch. He attacks one-on-one, pushes off a little bit aggressively, but there's no call, then a couple passes lead to Sam Hauser in the corner. You won't get a much better look than this. New York's approach to these isolations was pretty simple. When he starts to attack, they're going to send the 2 closest help defenders to the gaps to load up on either a left or right hand drive, and he makes the right read on a kick to Horford, who also misses on a high quality corner 3. The thing about these types of shots though is that while they're still volatile, if you shoot enough of them you're gonna start hitting, and that's pretty much the premise of Boston's offense, with this one from Horford putting them up 9 at the end of the third. In the fourth, the Knicks threw out a wrinkle that I wasn't expecting. They put Cat on Jaylen Brown as the primary matchup and trusted him to hold his own in isolation. Jaylen's a very physical creator, but he's also someone that the defense is comfortable letting settle for jumpers. So by sticking a big body like Cat on him and having him sit back with a cushion of space, you're able to keep him from getting to the rim. As far as their coverages against those guard-to-guard screens, as long as it isn't Tatum or Brown handling the ball, they're going to switch all of those to avoid advantages. And by doing that, you're able to force the supporting guys into more one-on-one play, which ultimately means you're going to force them into a lot more off-the-dribble threes. When it is Tatum handling the ball, remember they want Brunson hedging. But if it's any of their other wings, they're going to continue to switch. Then if it's Cat, they're primarily looking to drop because, like I said earlier, they want Tatum settling for that pull-up jumper. So, knowing that Cat wants to drop and Brunson wants to hedge, they went to a double drag setup in hopes of creating an advantage. And when Tatum turns the corner while Horford pops, it looks like they might get one, only for OG to get a hand on the pass and force a turnover. And I want to take a second to focus on OG's defense because you could argue it was the biggest difference. Brown has Brunson on an island in the middle of the floor, and OG perfectly times up a stunt at the ball to make him kick it out to Tatum, then recovers in time to run him off the line, only to stay attached and lead him right into help at the rim. With that said though, OG isn't always able to get around screens, and it's in those situations where Cat has to switch. Now Tatum's got him on an island with plenty of space to operate, and like I keep saying, this is a good look, it just isn't the most consistent. Compare that to a play from a few minutes later where Tatum gets the switch onto Cat, attacks the rim, and draws help. The ball finds its way to the corner, and that's a really high percentage shot. To me, it's less about the volume of threes and more about the types of threes you're getting. This time when Tatum asks Cat, they go back to that inverted pick and roll, and like clockwork, Brunson hedges while Cat goes under, leaving him with room to step into that pull-up jumper if he wants it, and he wanted it a lot down the stretch of this game. Even when he's got Brunson on an island, he's looking for the triple, and it just simply wasn't falling. I think these are the types of shots that people point to when they criticize the Celtics for taking too many threes. I brought up how these shots impact Tatum's individual performance because of how volatile they are. Well, it's the exact same thing on the team level. One of the biggest talking points after game 1 was how the Celtics attempted 60 threes. They only made 15 of them, or 25%, so it's very easy to look at that as the biggest factor in their loss. While that may be the case, if you remember opening night from this season, they played the Knicks and attempted 61 threes, but this time around they made 29 of them, which was the primary factor in a blowout win. I don't think attempting 60 threes is inherently good or bad. To me, it's much more instructive to look at the types of threes that are being taken and the process behind creating them. And during this late game stretch, I'd say it was a mix of good and bad. On this play, you're going to see Horford initiate from the pinch post, and they set up a flare screen for Holiday. Remember, Brunson isn't going to switch, so they end up with a really good look. This is a great three. But a minute later, they set up a similar action with Tatum initiating and Brown coming off a down screen from Holiday, and this time they're actually able to force the switch. Now you've got a mismatch with 13 seconds on the clock, only for Brown to immediately take that three instead of looking for something better. And to me, the biggest problem with Boston's offense was how rushed they looked. With a full shot clock, there's no reason to immediately fire a transition three, even if it is a pretty good look. Or you've got a play like this where Brown collapses the defense, finds the open man, and the ball ends up in White's hands on the wing. With Cat closing from his left, there's a huge gap to attack, but he decides to take the quick three. Then after grabbing an offensive rebound, Holiday takes the most rushed three of the night, and all that's to say they really were just chucking. That's especially a problem against the Knicks because all of their offense is going to run through maybe the most reliable fourth quarter player in the NBA. There's not much to think about with Brunson. They're going to get him a matchup he wants, they're going to clear out for him to play one-on-one, and he just seems to deliver every single time. After 11 fourth quarter points, the game was tied at 100 with 5 seconds to go. Off the inbound, they run a little give and go action for Brunson to get an open floater, but it just rims out and we're headed to overtime. Once again, OT was all about New York's defense. When Brown drives, Brunson makes a great help play to turn him away. Then when it gets to Holiday, Cat drops from the corner while Brunson peel switches, then McHale and Hart switch up top, and all of that switching leads to a big mismatch down low, only for Cat to again drop from the corner to protect the rim, and after all that scrambling, the result is a shot clock violation. These are the types of plays that I think the Knicks deserve a ton of credit for. Cat's on Brown, he does a good job of funneling a drive into help, where McHale stunts at the ball, then recovers to steal a pass, and that defense turns into offense on the other end, with OG throwing down a big-time dunk to give them the lead. With that Knicks defense, there was also some lackluster Celtics offense. Tatum's gonna screen Brunson to force the switch, and instead of attacking that mismatch, Holiday decides to try his hand at a step back three. Next time down, they again looked for Brunson. This time it's a double drag, first to get the switch onto Cat, then onto Brunson, and this time they're gonna clear out for Tatum to go to work, only for Brunson to defend his butt off, pressuring the ball, cutting off multiple attacks, and forcing a mid-range jumper. So instead of hunting for Brunson, they looked for Mikal. And this was probably the best possession they had all night, with Tatum sealing off low post position for a deep catch and easy points. Then instead of leaning into that more, they went back to the perimeter matchup hunting. Tatum gets Cat, he does what he's supposed to do on a drive, then the Knicks X out to literal perfection to not give up a catch and shoot three. Horford's still able to step into a great look though, and that's where the volatility shows up. Still, they found a way to cut it down to 3 in the final seconds. Tatum's gonna try to isolate Bridges, Cat stunts at the ball and deflects a kickout pass, then when Brown starts to attack, he intentionally fouls because they had one to give. Now they're inbounding from the sideline with 3 seconds left, and they try to go to Brown on the opposite wing, only for Mikal to rip the ball out of his hands, sealing the game and completing the 20-point comeback. Then in game 2, we again saw a really similar situation. With about 3 minutes left to go in the third, Porzingis hit a 3 to give the Celtics a 20-point lead, and all they had to do was execute down the stretch. Again, it was all about New York's defense. When Mitchell Robinson's on Kristaps, they're looking to switch those screens, and Kristaps counters by slipping, only for Brunson to step over as the low man and draw a charge. When they went to Brown in the post, the low man, in this case OG, is going to step over to that side of the floor while McBride zones up 2 shooters, not letting the ball get into the paint. Real quick, I want to go back to Robinson switching though. He looks the most mobile he's been in years, and his ability to defend in space has been a huge X factor for the Knicks during this run. These minutes to start the fourth are always crucial for New York though, and that's because the amount of offense they're able to produce pretty much determines how much rest Brunson's gonna get. And it was Mikal Bridges who came up big, essentially running point guard and scoring 9 points in the first 5 minutes of the quarter. Because of his individual play, they were able to get through nearly half of the fourth before getting Brunson back in the game, but they continued to run through the hot hand and he continued to produce results. He scored all 14 of his points in the fourth quarter, including this 3-pointer in transition to cut Boston's lead to single digits. Still though, the biggest story was that Knicks defense, and more specifically the way they mixed up their coverages. The Celtics went back to double drag, and you're gonna see Robinson jump out to the ball, but instead of switching, it's a hedge while Hart tags Porzingis. That leaves Horford open up top, only for Mikal to shift one pass up while Hart recovers to the corner, and they're able to run him off the line where he isn't nearly as comfortable. A little over a minute later, they ran it again for Pritchard, and it's the exact same coverage with the hedge, the tag, and the shift, but Mikal's a touch late getting out to Horford, only for him to miss the open 3 anyways. Still, Boston likes the looks they're getting, so they go back to it a third time. And on this one, McBride actually gets taken out by the screen, and that's when Robinson's gonna commit to the ball with a switch. That way they're able to avoid a numbers advantage, and the play turns into Brown isolating OG, which you'll take 10 out of 10 times if you're Tom Thibodeau. Like I mentioned earlier, anytime they went to one of the Jays in the post, the low man would step over to that side of the floor to offer immediate help, and just like in game 1, they couldn't get any points in the paint. With that said, I still think they had a good process on some of these plays. When Jalen isolates and draws help to the gaps, then Holiday drives off the catch, it causes a complete breakdown and results in Horford on an island. That's a great possession, but again, there's so much volatility with all of these threes, and it makes you start to overthink. Like on this pick and pop, Horford should shoot this 100 out of 100 times, but after just missing one, he instead looks for something in the paint and ends up with a much lower quality look. However, you also had some plays where they continued to feel rushed. Just running through this play quickly, you'd think that this is a great opportunity for White, and it absolutely is. He probably makes this 40% of the time. But if we go back a few seconds, it started with Tatum having Brunson on an island and not making any effort whatsoever to attack. By getting nothing in the paint, you're basically letting the Knicks roll a die on whether you're making shots or not. A staple of this Celtics team last year was the way they consistently passed up good shots for even better ones, and we just haven't seen that in this series. A wide open corner three for Tatum is a great shot, but with Brunson on the ground and Hart running to the corner, I can't help but wonder if a pass or a drive results in a dunk. The same applies to Jaylen Brown. The Knicks are sticking with their game plan of hedging with Brunson and going under screens, and Brown ends up with a wide open pull-up three, but is it the best shot you could possibly get? Well, depending on the defensive execution, you could argue that it was. This time they go back to double drag with Tatum, and they get Brunson hedging while OG goes under, and right here there's a window for him to take the pull-up jumper. He wisely passes it up, only to end up isolating OG, who uses his strength and length to completely smother him. With that said though, there were a few instances where they were able to get Brunson on an island, and this is where he deserves a ton of credit because as a small guard, he was left in single coverage and picked up multiple stops. He might not have the height, the length, or even the agility, but what he does have is a really strong lower body. So in these situations, he isn't easy to move, which allows him to hold his ground against a guy like Brown. And then, of course, there's everything he does on offense. With about 2 minutes left, they clear out for him to take Holiday one-on-one, and like clockwork, he gets to his spot and rises up to give the Knicks their first lead of the entire game. I mentioned that the Celtics weren't able to score in the paint. Well, the only time they did during the stretch was after a timeout when Mazzulla drew up a beautiful flat ball screen at the logo for Tatum to build up ahead of steam, taking that lead back with 18.5 seconds to go. We all know exactly what that means though. Brunson's gonna play one-on-one, and again he gets to his spot, but Holiday fouls him to not give up an easy look. Then he hits both free throws, giving Boston one chance to win the game. Tatum gets the switch onto Robinson, who does a great job of moving his feet to take away the middle and force him into help, only for McHale to step in with a late contest and pick up his second game-saving stop in a row. Down 20, 15 minutes left, heading back to New York with a 2-0 series lead. In my opinion, there were a few major factors that contributed to these comeback wins. On the Boston side, I think the primary cause of these collapses all have to do with volatility. Tatum's shot diet creates highs and lows, and the team living on the three-point line does the same. But I also think their offense has looked really rushed, and it looks like they're taking the shots that the Knicks want them taking. Speaking of which, New York's defensive execution has been the biggest factor, and I'm not sure it's close. Then of course, I have to highlight the individual performers. Jalen Brunson is the closer. McHale had that huge scoring run to open the fourth in game 2 and has had both game-saving stops. OG's been reliable on offense while changing everything defensively, and between Robinson, Hart, and Cat, all three have done big things for them on defense. All that's to say, the Knicks have hit a gear that most people didn't really think they had, and headed back to their home court for game 3, they've got a really big chance to continue shocking the world and make the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of this series. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.